What's that? Up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. No, wait. Up. Oh, no, back up. Yeah, no, it's a bird. Killing birds. To be specific, a bunch of birds. If you've ever thought about, hey, what if birds were, not scary, but had the ability to be scary, potentially, although not really. Killing Birds, yeah, a film that features some birds, yes, and also a lot of Italian hijinks. And yeah, this is a movie. Just to get things that are kind of obvious out of the way first, Killing Birds is also known as Zombie 5. So on the other side of the insert, you can see it says Zombie 5, Killing Birds. This is what it was usually marketed as. And it was also titled Raptors, or just plain old Killing Birds, which is what the title shows. And as a zombie movie, well, it sucks. It's not really a zombie movie, much at all. It does feature zombies. I hesitate to use the plural zombies, but it does feature zombies, and it is a movie, which I suppose Zombie 5 would be a movie. But, this is one of those things where there was a way to make money, and some Italians thought, hey, we can make some money off of this. And so they slapped Zombie 5 on the movie and went on to really disappoint a lot of people.
I told you, I have to do a piece on the library building fund.
Fuck the library building fund. This is a matter of life or death.
Now, is Killing Birds a bad film? Well, let's talk about that. So the film itself is basically just the story of a bunch of college kids who, they're seniors, and they are completing this research on a, let's see, what kind of bird is it? It's a...
Well, I didn't want to say anything till this, but they'll publish the paper if we find the ivory-billed woodpecker.
I don't know, it's a rare woodpecker, basically, and they decide to take a jaunt off into the Louisiana wilderness, which is not very well shown. It does not look like they're in the wilderness. It just looks like they're in someone's backyard. But I guess if you've never been to the South, it could look like wilderness. I'm not sure. But they go off into the wilderness of Louisiana. They have this ranger that goes with them.
Call me Brian.
Because they're using the, I guess, like National Park System or something's equipment. And by equipment, I mean a van, and then there they meet Robert Vaughn, who's minus an eye and is blind, and he is very obvious to us viewers, the man who in the beginning of the film actually goes around and kills his wife and some other people very brutally before getting attacked by birds, who are the reason that he is blind. And then they go and they find another house, and there's some bird cages and weird shit starts happening, and we get into, it's a poor man's version of Lucio Fulci's The Beyond, basically, is what we're given. Now, the director of this one is Claudio Lattanzi. He was, I think, the assistant director on Stage Fright, if I'm not mistaken. But he worked with Michele Soavi on a few projects, started with his Dario Argento documentary. And he learned a lot from Soavi. He was also a good friend of Joe D'Amato. And Joe D'Amato was actually the director of photography on this film. Of course, Joe D'Amato, very prolific filmmaker, made literally hundreds of movies, both as a director and as a director of photography, and was kind of a king of Italian exploitation. Although, if we're being honest, he worked in just about every genre. He was a king... King of exploitation is a little, I don't know, demeaning for him. He was a king of getting shit done. That's what Joe D'Amato was king of, and giving people chances. He gave a lot. He helped a lot of filmmakers in Italy at the time, and this is one of those projects that came about through that. It was actually produced by his company, Film Mirage, and it is another in a long stable of cheap Italian productions associated with Joe D'Amato. When it comes to the quality, that's really where things get tough. You have a lot of scenes that are very obviously pretty cheap. There's, I think, the same the same neck prosthetic is used for 3 separate kills in the movie. Like, it very obviously, it just like, it might be like the same mold and different prosthetic, but it's very obviously the same throat slash used 3 separate times, 2 of them in the opening, which is insane. That's so aggressively ballsy in its cheapness. And that cheapness really pervades through the entire film. There's this guy over here who can't stop looking at the film crew. If somebody could please tell him to look at his fucking, teacher or whatever, that'd be great. We get some truly terrible acting from our leads, including what I guess is supposed to be a Southern accent.
Can we just go? I'm tired of this parking lot, 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 tired of this parking lot.
I'm not sure that this guy did his research.
Over my dead body.
Speaking of bad acting, there's a point where it turns out this guy is our main character, and my brain melted because this guy, not a lead at all. I don't know how this happened. I do know how this happened. Italians. I love Italians. I love Italian horror movies, and there's something that I appreciate about their mix of really quality atmospheric filmmaking and just garbage production values and garbage acting. It makes me smile inside. It makes me feel warm. And hey, the film actually starts off really nice with some murders, plenty of blood, some incredulous birds, a sprinkle of child endangerment. It's not bad. It's not bad. When we get to the college, things start to take a bit of a turn, but you still get little moments of what the fuckery, like this early Pixar animation reel, which, is certainly a choice that was made in the film. And then when the kids get to the house, Robert Vaughn shows up out of fucking nowhere, and you're like, hey, that's Robert Vaughn. Bye, Robert Vaughn. You're not going to be in this movie very much. And you know what? At very least, he puts in a performance for the few minutes he's there, and does a reasonably good job. He's a man who has like automatic gravitas. It's very nice to have in this film.
Little Missy full of questions, isn't she?
It's my job. I'm a reporter.
We get a computer guy who comes along on the trip for no discernible reason. He just is popping on a computer all day.
I've been working all summer on it.
I'll bet.
Well, maybe not all summer.
At one point, the kids stumble on an abandoned truck in the middle of the woods. And, my reaction would be, oh, look, an abandoned truck. Move on past, because I'm not here for abandoned trucks. I'm here to look for a rare woodpecker, which, as far as I know, probably isn't in a truck. And yet, they try to pry open the chassis. They open the door. Of course, a zombie, or a dead guy, at least, falls out. And they're like, whoa! And the whole time, I'm just like, well, you got what you wanted, a jump scare. Not sure what else would have happened in this instance. And in fact, there's a lot of snooping around that these guys do that really doesn't seem to bear any relevance to the plot other than to get them moving forward. At one point, they decide, well, here's an abandoned house. Might as well sleep here. And that's where things go off the fucking rails, and it turns into that aforementioned sort of cheapo Beyond. Anywho, lots of spooky shit starts happening. They use that throat prosthetic a third time. Some people die. Idiots search for other idiots in the woods. And at one point, there's even a zombie, kinda.
Oh my God!
And look, I am having a bit of fun with this. This is a very dumb film and is not particularly well made, but it does have charm. There are some deaths that hit really well. There's this head bashing death that I think is really violent, and while it's not particularly gory, it does have a lot of impact, and that comes a lot from the atmosphere of the scene, the cinematography, Joe D'Amato doing his fucking best as usual. Build up to it is really solid, and then when it happens, between the music and the sound effects, and honestly, even the acting in this instance, it works out really well. And that kind of thing happens a few times where you have these very atmospheric, usually very foggy, there's a lot of smoke in this movie, scenes, and what you wind up with is something that's not bad, not particularly great, but not bad, and in some cases pretty good. And I think that was definitely much more than I was expecting. I had always, heard bad things about this movie. I remember watching the trailer on maybe the Zombie DVD back in the day. I'm not really sure where it was, but I remember seeing the trailer for it and being like, oh, that looks like garbage. And I wouldn't call this garbage. I don't think it's that bad. It's definitely not for everybody. I think I think it kind of relies on what I call the weird bullshit conundrum. And the weird bullshit conundrum is basically this. In order to really get across this very atmospheric, you know, dread-filled horror aesthetic that is very much that kind of Fulci aesthetic, that very, I don't know what the fuck is happening, holy shit, oh my god, why are there guts coming out of my mouth, that sort of thing. You kind of have to get rid of logic. And you have to ignore explanation and just allow the characters to experience things without knowing what's going on, and in turn without telling the audience what's going on. And that's very much what this movie does. Does it do it successfully? Yes and no. I think, you know, with Fulci, the beauty of a Fulci movie is that, generally speaking, while you may not know what's going on, it has a very strong visual appeal. There's usually some really good music playing, and it feels stylized in just the right way. And I think if you don't get that stylization across, then things can go a little awry, and it can feel old hat, it can feel needlessly confusing, even if the level of confusion is basically the same. And I think that's what happens a lot of the time here is I'm not really feeling that stylization that's necessary to get that befuddlement across, to make the weird bullshit feel like it is intentional instead of a mistake. And, you know, I think that the weird bullshit is intentional. I just don't think that someone who's watching this without that mindset would necessarily agree. I think a lot of people might think this movie is stupid or just doesn't make sense because the filmmakers made a mistake. And I don't think the filmmakers made a mistake as far as, you know, what their intentions were. I think that the only mistake was that they didn't put their resources in the right place, which, to be fair, not a lot of resources to go around. A lot of these movies, when they work almost by accident, in the sense that the filmmakers usually go in with the same mindset of, we're going to make something that's, you know, that's frightening and weird. There's going to be a certain dream logic to it. And then, you know, in some cases it works out really well in the final product. In other cases it doesn't. And in this case, I think it's a mixed bag, which is really just a long way of saying the original point. But yeah, mixed bag. That said, it is more straightforward than I had envisioned. I thought it would be a lot more nonsensical plot-wise, but really the plot is pretty straightforward. You know, guy gets pecked to blindness, loses his kid. A bunch of college kids head out into the woods to try to find a fucking bird. They meet the guy years later, who's kind of a hermit almost, and then weird shit starts happening because this is a place of evil. And, you know, I think you can definitely take that, and then evil, as bad filmmaking, but I think it's just the natural progression for a story like this. Again, doesn't always work in the scenes themselves, but if you write this down as just a story and you ignore the filmmaking issues at play, then you've got yourself a fairly straightforward, dream logic-filled horror film. And I can dig it, man. In the end, though, it does turn out that working for Suavi doesn't make you as good as Suavi, or like even a quarter as good. However, there are some pretty solid sequences scattered here and there, sadly weighed down by some truly terrible acting and a plot that never feels like it knows where it wants to go. Which is too bad, because I do think the filmmakers knew where they wanted to go. They just missed the mark a little bit. So do I recommend Killing Birds as a film? That's a tough one. It's a real tough one. If you love Italian what the fuckery, I certainly recommend it. It is not nearly as outlandish as you might want. There's very little killing birds and there's very little zombies, but there's plenty of moments that'll make you laugh. There's plenty of moments that'll be maybe a little bit shocking. I would say this is mid-tier Italian schlock. So definitely not a necessary purchase, but definitely not one that I regret owning, and certainly one that I will revisit at some point. So at very least, it's worth a rewatch for me.
Well, essential is essential.
As far as extras, now the extras is where this disc really shines. I'm actually really pleased with these. First off, there's an extremely informative and engaging commentary with Sam Deegan. She is an absolute horror and Italian scholar. It's interesting. She really ties into my feelings regarding scripted commentaries. I'm actually going to have a video coming out fairly soon where I talk a lot about scripted commentary tracks. And for all I know, she has a script in front of her. I don't know for a fact, one way or the other. but the way she talks and the way she relays information, it doesn't feel like she has a script. It feels like she's just going off the cuff based on her knowledge, and I love that. It's really nice. A big aspect of this commentary is Deegan defending the legacy of Joe D'Amato, and she does that very well. I think if you're going into this just wanting more history of Italian cinema and exploitation and Joe D'Amato himself, then you're going to get a lot of great information. If you're going in here specifically to learn more about Killing Birds, very understandably, she doesn't get as much into that, although she does, talk about various aspects of production, how filmmaking at the time for the Italian industry affected the production, so plenty of information, and one of the better commentaries I've listened to recently. So very good commentary. We also, if you do want more information about the film itself, we get a 49-minute interview with director Claudio Lattanzi, and he talks about his early work with Soavi, Film Mirage, a very detailed overview of making Killing Birds, working with Joe D'Amato. At one point, he talks about portraying the zombies, like plural portraying the zombies, which was the first time I realized that there were multiple zombies in the movie. It's partly because of the way it's filmed, and if you pay close attention, there are a couple moments where it's like, oh yeah, there are multiple zombies, and they do look slightly different, so it is there, but this ties into my issues with the filmmakers not revealing things right. There's a lot of reveal errors in this film, and one of them is it feels like there's just one zombie, unless you pay really close attention, and then you notice, oh, okay, well that one, didn't teleport. There's two in that scene, but because you never see them really together, it feels just like one guy in the zombie suit, which it turns out there is. So that's, I appreciate Claudio Lattanzi. He seems like a cool dude. It's a great interview. It's 49 fucking minutes. You learn a lot about Film Mirage and working with D'Amato. And it's really cool because Claudio Lattanzi, he's basically a footnote in Italian horror movie history. He's not like a big name or anything, but it's always fascinating to me to hear about the stories of these guys who didn't really, turn into the next Argento or didn't turn into the next Fulci or whatever, but did their best, tried real hard, worked in the system, and wound up with a small body of work. I think he's still working, but either which way, really solid interview. Aside from that, we also get an interview with Larry Ravine, who did the sound on the film and worked on a bunch of Italian productions. That's 15 minutes, and it's also really good. You get a ton of additional production tidbits, working with Joe D'Amato, that sort of thing. Nothing shocking, but still solid interview. Yeah, overall, Killing Birds, again, as a movie, it's maybe a mild recommend. Again, under very specific circumstances. As a release, I actually think this is a fantastic release, and it might be the best release of the bunch for this month's package, but we'll see. I'll get into the rest in a few other videos, but so far, really pleased, even if there are some serious flaws on display here. Yeah. Until next time, please check me out on Patreon, social media stuff, all that bullshit, and go watch a movie.